Welcome back to Beyond the Numbers with McKissock Appraisal. I'm your host, Julie Mollendorf, and today we're talking to Steve Maher. Steve, along with being a fantastic McKissock instructor, is a certified residential appraiser in North Carolina. He's been appraising since 1991, Steve?
That's correct.
All right. His practice has a wide range of business, way outside just your regular residential lending. He offers the spectrum of services for all your appraisal needs. So, Steve, today we are here to talk desktops. So, tell me what comes to mind when I say desktops?
Well, desktops, as you well know, is basically not doing the physical inspection on the property. There is so much great information already out there on the internet, through the systems, through the old MLSs, as well as the tax information to verify, as well as be able to talk to all the individuals that the intended users or really the client. We have used the substantial amount of desktops for many years. We progressed when HPC came into the system. Where they took away so much of the financial gains that the investor would possibly give us, that the problem is that we had to look from other sources. And in doing so, we looked at the possibility of helping out our partners, our real estate agents who are having a lot of issues. They were trying to figure out how to be able to make a presentation to a listing when they know that particular seller think their house is old, like most of us do. And so they asked for us to do a desktop. Now, so we're not going out there to do the complete inspection, but we have enough information together from both the real estate agent as well as all the information that we have through the internet. And we're able to do a desktop. And doing the desktop, the restricted appraisal report. You want to be sure you understand, we only got two written reports. It's a restricted appraisal report as well as a full real estate, the appraisal report. So we look at the restricted appraisal report, otherwise called desktops, and fill on desktop a GPAR form. A GPAR form, in most of all of our softwares, has got GPAR. That's a general purpose appraisal report form. It's identical as Fannie Mae, except they don't have that data that's already pre-printed in the normal Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's work. So we can make our own type of valuation processes through these general purpose appraisal reports. And then we will guide it to exactly what is the intended use of that appraisal by guiding ourselves through what we call the CESAID program. The CESAID, as CESAID, the scope of work, as we will know, and that is very, very important. So the C is dealing with who's my client and all the intended users. And the more intended users, the more detailed, because many times we go to court, it's going to have to be much more detailed. Then we have the E, which is the effective date of the appraisal, where it would be a post or even a retrospective type of appraisal that we do for divorce cases. And also many of the estates. And then we go into SAID, which is the S, which is a subject property, and all the characteristics that you feel as an appraiser that the market will appreciate. Now, the reason why I mention that is that we have two problems dealing with this. We are not, of course, code inspectors. We're not home inspectors.
Right.
We operate as a buyer, experienced buyer. So experienced buyer will look at the property and see what the property can gain from the idea of that buyer in all the different types of valuations. Then we have the A, and these are the assignment conditions that the client is going to give us. Now, those assignment conditions will vary from many, many different sources. We work with Blackstone and Colony when we deal with hard money people. So we gather the information and we really don't do an interior inspection or exterior inspection of the property. We have all the data needed, and all we need to know is what improvements are going to be made to the property by the contractor. Now, what we're trying to do is give a hypothetical, if this property was done and finished by that particular time period, and all the information that we were given by that third party, the contractor, has been basically came to being on that property, we will give them an idea of what to expect from the market. We'll do 3 solds and then three actives to give some idea as to how the market is be able to play out. And then we will give, of course, we anticipate the selling price that will take off the cost of cures, will take off all the others. So be able to know that the contractor is making money. If the contractor is not making money, well, our hard money people will not be making any money at all. So we got to guarantee those hard money people getting their profit margins that is going to be needed. Then we have the I, which is the most important part, the intended use of that appraisal. We've got to be sure that the intended use is taken care of, and we have put a big definition on that intended use within that scope of work, and very detailed. And then we have the D, which is basically the definition of value. The definition of value, there's 33 different types of valuations out there. Now, we as a profession, we have approximately 7 to 9 of these. Now, personally, I may use only 3. When I deal with bankruptcy courts, we have a fair market value. We don't use the definition of Fannie Mae. So we've got to copy and paste it in the documentation. But the reason why I mention that, there is so much out there. Right. So much out there that is needed by our services. You've got that experience. You've got that knowledge. All you have to do is start knocking on doors. When HVC came into the system, we've seen such a dramatic drop, and great appraisers and all that experience was gone because financially they couldn't make it. You know, we took a race to get to the lowest level so we could be able to get that doggone assignment. And the lowest level of actually financially, a bidding wars that took place, you aren't making any money. You are actually losing money.
Right.
So the problem is that we've got to be sure that we recognize that there are so many other items out there. And so what we have done is we separated ourselves from Stephen L. Maher and Associates. Then I raised a market value professionals. Market value professionals is basically all of the private businesses that we do. It is geared to all the other things outside of Fannie and Freddie. So we dump that into that. We find that up underneath our E&O insurance, no problem. So we have been really going after so much of the work. Right now, we've had a big issue dealing with doing floor plans, doing measurements, since we're coming with a brand new process with the ANSI system. These real estate agents have no idea. They don't want to dirty their fingernails. All they want to do is market, you know? They want to market. They've got to go out there and network continuously. And so we have really taken our place in the development process to help our partners, our real estate agents out, helping our legal issues such as the divorces, the estates, and all of this could be done without full inspection. However, if you know there's going to be some controversies for a divorce case, we definitely will be doing a full appraisal, including all the measurements and everything, and we do a complete floor plan of the property. That is mandatory here in our company. So we put in the doors, the sink, the toilet, the bathtub, and the shower.
All the fixtures, right?
All the fixtures. And we put beds in the bedrooms and, couches and chairs. The only thing we don't put in is the windows. This gives an impression, legally wise, that we've done a very thorough job of our observation onto the property. And will be hopefully more secure from a counter appraiser who have a difference of opinion and value. So what we're trying to do is be more professional. We've got to be sure we do the networking. And that's the biggest problem of us appraisers, is that we are so geared to taking orders from an AMC and do the due diligence of getting that job done in perfected type of ways. But when you have no physical or mentally contact with that individual AMC. They're giving it to you because you have the lowest value, or that you have risen up into a good product, and they feel very compelling to take you on as an appraiser. So when we get into the private type of work that we do, we've got to put ourselves out. We've got to start knocking on doors, and we've got to be able to go out and network. Now, when I first started, I really did this back in the 91s, when probably about, I would say, good 10% of our appraisers are at that point in our 70s or late 60s. And so out of the 38,000 of us, we anticipate probably about 12,000 are in that range, where we have cut our local market down significantly in the last couple of years just because of the volume that was coming through for the last few years for that pandemic and those low interest rates. And we were bombarded. However, now we're going to have to go back out to where our markets used to be prior to the downturn, or excuse me, down to the upchuck, basically into the system.
Right.
And so we have now been knocking on doors continuously. So I've let the other two appraisers handle all the home financing most of the time. And then I'll do some of the complex properties, but most of all mine are basically desktops, dealing with various different types of values. I've had so many issues when we have a court case that had for instance, a train right behind the property, and they come up with a differentiation of values. We've had some problems in dealing with sound, getting sound scores on property, building up with an industrial plant or any type of areas where you have a lot of sound. If it's the airport, for instance, when homeowners are being basically ran out by those doggone noises at the value that has been taking place. We had no one with the smells. The lawsuit came in. What do you call smells in the body of a value? We always have that problem of dealing with the process of the full bundle of rights. And many people don't understand that bundle of rights create a ownership in our particular market from air to the earth all the way down to earth. And we have what we call UPED, UPED. So I love my acronyms.
Yes, you do.
It's the way I can remember things. And so what we've got to do is break those things down into a process of what is happening to the actual ownership of the bundle of rights, let alone the value of the land, the value of the improvements. We look at the value of the home ownership bundle of rights. And when they're harmed, they got to have a value made. There are so many things out there that is needed for our knowledge and experience that we need to be sure that we get all of our appraisers together, because every market that we have is different. And every appraisal that does those businesses need to have a good understanding of what is happening. And I have to, he said, since I've been with McKissock, and prior to that, I was with the local MLS here teaching real estate appraisers for 12 years before Richard gave me a call in order to come with McKissock, bless his heart. And I go around and I see we all have the same problems nationwide, as McKissock sent me here and there and beyond. And there are so many great people in our business and so many professionals that are just really involved in the business. And McKissock has done an excellent job of getting things trained in a way to be able to take these different types of functions on. And right. I guess this is how I got involved, is by getting the information McKissock had years ago, and then it's continuously learning and bringing it all together. And, there's two major things that I always feel as a private type of getting away from the home appraisal values is to be able to know an expert witness. That is a mandatory type of I would say CE courses should be taking. as well as an adjustment course. The adjustment courses have got to be located within each market. It's got to be different, but you've got to have some type of creative math in order to be able to give those readers, give those audiences, the judge or the jury, a way to logically how we came up with those adjustments. If you can create I would say, a creative math, you are right. You always
Right.
prove me wrong.
You mean matched pair analysis doesn't always work, Steve? Yeah, Steve, you make some fantastic points. I find that appraisers get focused on lending work in a lot of situations. But I think a crucial piece that some of us are missing is the fact that we have to establish ourselves as an expert in the valuation process, and not just in the lending realm, but with attorneys, with judges, with realtors, with hard money lenders. All of those people need to see that we as appraisers have more to offer than just the fill in the form 1004 residential lending transaction. We need to focus on the spectrum of services that we can offer. The analogy that I like to use is some appraisers are focused on the fact that they can only deliver the Mercedes-Benz of appraisals. There's no other option, but every bell, every whistle, every piece that could possibly be done. But sometimes a client needs a Chevrolet. They still need a vehicle, 4 wheels, doors, engine, that gets them from point A to point B, but they don't need a moonroof and self-assisted parking and all of those features that can come on your Mercedes. And then sometimes they need a Kia. Still 4 wheels, 4 doors, 2 doors, engine that gets you from point A to point B. So you're still doing the basics of the appraisal process. And I think appraisers, if you apply my car analogy, appraisers are afraid to do a Chevrolet appraisal or a Kia appraisal. They feel that it is dumbing down their process to some extent. What do you think about that? How do you feel about that analogy?
I totally agree with you. And this is one thing we've had problems here in the last, I would say, last 10 years, the last decade. As the collateral underwriter is getting all the appraisals through the process and collecting all that great data that we have painstakingly with blood, sweat, and tears to obtain, they are stripping it out and looking at every doggone zip code and coming up with what a ranch-style square footage is, a 2-story home, what have you. They're getting more confidence in the data. And then with that knowledge, they look at the investor. The investor now say, I don't need a full-blown appraisal, as you call the Mercedes, because the risk is not there. So they're now created a cafeteria style of appraisals. But the risk is not there, and the gentleman or the buyer is putting down 20% of the money, the really risk is gone. Because even if they did have to foreclose on the property, these more than compensated for the amount of the loan that's been taking place. So they don't need a full-blown appraisal. If this good credits, have good history of payments, and it looks like he's going to be making a sustained amount of money in the near future. So they don't need that full-blown appraisal.
It's all risk.
Yeah, and so they'll do different types. They'll do an AVM rather than, or they'll do a waiver, and so that is good because most of us are looking at. We anticipate is going to be doing those basically major issues: the FHA, the VA, the USDA, and those high risk properties that the client feels, where there's very limited amount of equity into the property that the buyer or the seller has, and that we're anticipating that they need to have some trained and sophisticated eyes on the property. But I'm anticipating we're going to see a lot more of those, especially now that we've had all this appreciation taking place, and now we're going to a correction mode, but the correction is not going to be deep.
Right.
But so many of these are going to have a lot of equity and build up. So they're going to have the same thing. When they buy another house, they're going to have substantial money to go out in the next house. So they really don't need to have an appraisal if they meet all the criteria for a waiver or even put something as a short desktop. Of course, the 1004 desktop is basically what came out in the last few years. But there is so much outside of home financing that needs to be looked at. The biggest issue is that, I think you hit it, Julie, is that they're scared to go out and knock on doors.
Agreed.
I think we're so introverted over these years of sitting in the doggone offices and take assignments through AMCs. Right. That we forgot to make that relationships that we used to have.
We do. And I think we are, like you said, a lot of times we don't have any contact with a human. We may get an assignment via email. It's a lockbox property. So we're not even making an actual personal contact with anyone. And we forget all of those other pieces that go into developing a sound appraisal practice, getting outside the lending world. One of the things I hear from appraisers a lot when we talk about the desktop process or something that does not involve a physical inspection is risk. And appraisers are afraid that they will be held accountable or be the scapegoat if a loan goes bad and there was something related to the property, maybe physically, that either wasn't noted if a property data collector was present or wasn't noted because there was no physical inspection. And they're afraid they will lose their license because their feet will be held to the fire. How do you handle that discussion when an appraiser says, I'm not doing a desktop, it's too much risk?
Well, that's a great analogy of what they have put into you, because they're so used to doing a full. Once again, I think that our clients would not need a full appraisal if there is a substantial amount of equity being already placed in to the property that they do not have to worry about the amount of risk. We've taken it one step further. What we have done is that we looked over the shoulders of home inspectors. Home inspectors were having a big issue. No one was coming to becoming a home inspector. It was too much risk. They missed something of 3,000 things they look at on doggone property, and then they were sued. Well, NAR, I understood, went to the legislature. We need these inspectors for the buyers as well as the sellers. So the legislature put together a nice little list. And one of them is that the actual liability of the home inspector cannot be any greater than the amount that was paid to that inspector. The next one is that they didn't need to have any taller ladder than an 8-foot ladder. And if they need a roof inspection, they need to call a roofer rather than the home inspector. They'll do the valuations based upon the binoculars from the yards, but really they would ask the result. And I was brought to that attention probably about 10 years ago from another commercial appraiser. And he put this little statement in, and I thought it was wonderful. So I've been passing this out to everyone. And what it is that we're going to do the same thing within every one of our, outside of Fannie and Freddie, within our valuation product for all other private work. We have a statement, and I'm going to read that to you if you don't mind.
Yes, share it with us, Steve. Share it.
It's a general purpose appraisal report form, the GPAR form.
Correct.
We cannot put Fannie and Freddie, but we put in, says, the appraiser has been engaged to form an opinion of value. If subsequent developments or disagreements should arise, users of this appraisal agree that the appraiser may not be held liable for damages in excess of the amount that he or she was paid for doing the appraisal. Acceptance of and or use of this appraisal report constitutes acceptance of the above conditions. It's a way to be able, now I don't know if it'll hold water when we get into court, but it's going to be in your own words within your particular, say, scope of work processes that you could be able to point to a judge in your own words, is not pre-printed anywhere, that has validity to it. And so far, it's been really done a great job. I did put that into Fannie Mae work, and it wasn't more than a couple weeks later.
Right.
You can't do that.
Yeah. They said, no, that's not how we do this. But I think that's a fantastic statement to include. And I like the discussion related to problems that home inspectors had as well. I think that's a great statement to include in your non-lending, non-Fannie Freddie secondary market reports. So it is somewhat limiting that liability and that risk. My discussion when I'm talking to appraisers who are afraid of the risk involved in desktops, I try to steer them to the mindset that as long as your intended user, your client, understands what is being done and what is not being done, and they are willing to assume that risk. If it is a high-risk situation, high loan-to-value, chances are small that they are going to go the desktop route or even the hybrid or bifurcated route. They're probably going to go with the full spectrum, the full appraisal. But in situations with lower risk, I guess I just don't have an issue with, as long as everyone understands what you're doing and what you're not, and you're not misrepresenting and you're not misleading. I personally don't have an issue with creating a desktop report as long as you feel that you are able to issue a credible report. And I think that's what appraisers also get a little concerned with, is nobody's going to force you into the desktop model. If you see something that makes you have concern or you feel that your results will not be credible, it's your job as an appraiser to say, whoa, stop. This is going to require a higher level of due diligence. Just like the example you gave, where there might be something related to the property, smell, sound, whatever that may be. You can say, when you've positioned yourself as the expert, you can say, I need to be in this property. I need to be physically present. I need to see it, hear it, smell it. I hope not taste it, but you need to be there in the property to physically understand it. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly okay. And some situations will call for that. So that's the discussion I try to have with appraisers when they talk about how concerned they are that they might be missing something related to a property. And it's not a perfect answer. Things are always going to happen, but things are going to happen if you do a full inspection as well. There's no guarantee that we will never miss something crucial related to a property. What do you think about that?
Well, I think right now there's so much information out there. And now we have Google Earth and Google Street. We're able to see why a comp that came in real low, and be able to Google Earth and see all around the property to see if there's something environmental or economically wise that would have a problem to it. And this is, I feel like we are at a cusp of where we only have a few appraisers out there now. And you've got to be sure that you know your market, right. Know where the problems are, you know where the brownfields are, you know where you have issues with environmental issues. You've got to keep your hands on the market itself, whether it be economically, socially, governmentally, and, the issues is that we've got to be sure that our appraisers can be utilized in so many different fashions because you are the evaluators of property.
Right.
They don't understand so many times a CPA will do something or a banker will do something and they be completely off guard. And the same way with real estate agents. They're looking at comps and then they push a button and it comes out with a value that they should be listing at. There's so much more involved, and because all of our appraisers are well versed in education, and it's education. Many of our clients, or even basically the market, does not understand the amount of education that is required by an appraiser in order to get credentials. And then it's just a start, because it's never-ending education, never-ending at keeping your hands on the pulse of the market. And hopefully,
going back to what you were saying about technology, that's a key. That what we have at our fingertips as appraisers today, compared to, I've been appraising since '98, compared to the data that I had at my fingertips in 1998, it's a whole new world. We can get a sound score, like you said with Google Earth. I can get down on the ground and walk around my property virtually. I can look at traffic scores. I can look at heat maps. There's so much information. I can virtually inspect it in some situations. There's so much we have at our fingertips. We can be much more reliable from right here at our desk than we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I think we've learned that through COVID. There's a lot I can do from my desk. It's not the only answer, but I think it's an important option. And when we position ourselves, like we've said, as the valuation expert, we also need to be prepared to position ourselves to educate our clients as to what they may need in order to accomplish whatever goal they're setting in getting an appraisal. We're educating them as to what they need, what we can provide, and how it can be best done to meet everyone's needs. I think we've got to expand our thinking to include a variety of options for our clients. And I think, Steve, your firm is a prime example of how to do that and how to position yourself as a valuation expert.
We're very fortunate, I have to say. I joined a group when I first got into the business, the Kiwanis Club. And I know we have so many other great organizations, but I joined the Kiwanis Club. And joining the Kiwanis Club gave me the network that I needed in order to be able to get in contact with a lot of banking and investors at that point in the system. And there is so much network right now that's going on. That was years ago. Now I just go out and knock on doors on the actual process of looking at attorneys and hobnobbing with them, may take one or two out for lunch, get them to know who we are and what we do, and bring some examples to them so they know that they can rely on some expertise from our particular type of business that we do. And so we just need to get out there and just knock on doors and not be intimidated. But the problem is that we've been isolated ourselves entirely by looking at the last, I would say, 10 years, ever since HVCC came in, that basically took us away from the general market. And we are basically held in a small little company that accepted orders and no more than that.
Right.
And so the network was gone. And what I'm trying to do is to be able to get an employee-owned operation, employee-owned company, in order to be able to utilize good marketing people and both the actual the webs, putting ourselves on the webs, but also to be able to have good marketing people going around and we have 9 MLSs within our state of North Carolina, and we need to have one in every market a person who will part-time go out and knock on doors, because we know the intimidation of so many of our great appraisers of getting outside of their offices, except with others value. So what we're trying to do is be able to get everyone, the legally wise, governmental wise, to recognize us appraisers, and we'll go on a rotation basis. And of course, we create our own values based upon the complexity of the issue. And we put an hourly rate that we anticipate this going to be on. And how we came up with that hourly rate was really go back to the public again. And knowing where our peers are making in our market area. For instance, it'd be different in LA, it'd be different in Chicago and Philadelphia and Boston, but stay within what your peers are making, and you have a way to be able to justify. And that's the key, creative type of math to justify all the needed requirements and adjustments, including your fees. Now, we also have a problem that we came up with, for instance, here in Charlotte. There's about $58 an hour we need to look at as to be equal to our peers. Now, our problem is that being a fee appraiser, we also have to pay E&O insurance, we have to pay for office, utilities, MLS dues, super lots. We can go on and on and on. And you just got done your taxes. And now you're able to find out what is actually, to stay in business, what is going to cost just to turn that key on your office door per hour. And mine was where to get $26 an hour. On top of the $58, that puts us right around $90 an hour that we need to be looking at it here in the Charlotte market area to be equal to not the highest and not the lowest, but the average peer in our market area. And it gives us a way to be able to explain to our clients of how we are compensated in a logical fashion. And that's the key. They don't want to feel like they've been gouged. And so we want to be sure that we have a creative type of math showing from a start of something that we can rely on from a third-party issue. And this has created a lot of confidence in our service. It's created what we could feel at the complexity. Oh, that's going to take 6 hours. That's going to take 20 hours. As we look at it, we remember we are investigators. I mean, that's the whole new world of evaluator is an investigator. We will investigate what the buyers are doing. What would we, if we looked at this property as an experienced buyer that has those materials that attach to that improvement, that what the buyers would appreciate and come up with a value? And every market's different. Every market is different.
Very interesting, Steve. So you have a very unique viewpoint. Sounds like your appraisal firm is unique in and of itself. As we wrap up, is there anything, is there a way if appraisers wanted to contact you? Would you like to share your email with us?
I sure will. There is, I would probably say the best one would be steve.maher, M-A-H-E-R, at colibrigroup.com. That would be the best way. I also have a personal called S.Maher, M-A-H-E-R, at carolina.rr.com. That's a Roadrunner process years ago.
Great.
Kept it for many years. And that would be a way. And of course, if you have a problem, just get in contact with McKissock, and McKissock would be able to find that for you, be able to get right back to me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Steve, so much for being here today. Thank you for sharing your insights and, giving us a different viewpoint to the appraisal process and thinking outside the box. I greatly appreciate having you here today.
Julie, I really appreciate you inviting me. I really do. And I see such a great big market out there that no one has touched. And we need to get everybody involved. We cannot afford to lose any appraiser at this period of time. We need to have experienced appraisers. And having that experienced appraisers to take over that market in all real property valuation. Julie, thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. I'm Julie Mollendorf, your host. Thank you for being with us today on Beyond the Numbers with McKissock Appraisal.